Welcome to the Reality OS with Peter Duke and Tracy Connors. Tracy, what have you got for us today to start the show with?
This is our new intro. And when I get better at the whole thing, I'll make this sing for everybody. But it just arrived this morning, so.
Is that a Tibetan singing bowl?
It is.
It is. And that's supposed to help you align all your chakras?
That's one. You can get one that's tuned to each one of the chakral notes.
Really?
Apparently, each one of them has a different note attached to it.
And there's brass and then there's glass, right? There's different.
That's my cursory understanding of it at this point in time. I was just like, I need something more in my meditation practice. So that actually distracts my brain some to have to concentrate and make that thing go around the edge of the bowl and hit that note. And
well, doesn't it form like sacred geometry shapes in your consciousness? Isn't that the whole point of it? Yeah.
We'll find out.
So we ditched the intro this week just because people were commenting that it's kind of grating, and yes, it had some pretty good shock value for the first 22. Danny feels centered now. Very good. That's the whole point. You got to feel centered, right? Namaste, right? Anyway, so the title of the show this week is "The Truth is a Process, Not an End," because Tracy, in our nonstop quest to try to figure out what the hell is going on, have gone down a lot of rabbit holes, and those rabbit holes just always lead to more questions. So as soon as you think you have your arms around what you think is going on, then all of a sudden you discover that you have more questions. So I guess percentage wise, the more you know, the less you actually, the more you find out, the less you actually know. Is that
Socrates was onto something, huh?
Indeed. Yeah. I found out after I read that in the intro to a Neil Stevenson book that Socrates said that originally. But that's like everything that you read, right? If you dig back far enough, you find out, oh, somebody smart said that a long time ago. So what things have you discovered this week, Tracy?
Well, I was interested to hear what you discovered, because I already know what I discovered, and I want to see how they overlap, kind of thing, because I'm learning that the more you start looking into this stuff and opening yourself up to things, that synchronicities will present themselves. So I want to see how my learning this week maps onto what you learned and what we can add to each other's learning.
All right. And as you're saying that, my skeptic kicks into the back of my conscious and goes, well, if everything that we consume is media, and all media has been confirmed by some kind of agenda, then that would make perfect sense that's the reason that stuff overlaps. So anyway, well, I guess I was where was I going? When you start digging back into the secret societies and the Illuminati and the Rosicrucians and blah, 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 you keep going back and back and back. It all leads kind of back to Atlantis, right? The idea is that there is some hidden knowledge, and it comes from the Atlanteans. And I was thinking, well, what's that all about? And then I discovered a guy named, I think Corey Good is his name. And there were some videos. I think I found the original videos on Gaia. Gaia, by the way, is it's a sub channel on Amazon Prime. So it's something that you have to pay additional money for to see on Amazon Prime. And the original reason that I subscribed to it was because Jay Dyer's shows are on Gaia. And so I subscribed to Gaia, and Gaia's got some kind of like far out there content. A lot of it is, centering your chakra, kind of Tibetan singing bowl stuff. And then the other stuff is kind of like deep conspiracy stuff. And many of the things that are on Gaia's channel are completely open and available on YouTube. But I find it on Gaia, and it seems like Gaia is a place where Amazon is putting content that they don't want. They basically want to license it and then hide it from everyone so that so they don't wind up seeing it. So I watched a couple of Corey Good videos, and interesting guy. Again, one of the things that all of these people have in common is that they may be sociopaths or they may be onto something, but they all seem very sure of themselves. Like,
wait, are you talking about Corey Good is a sociopath?
I'm talking about the corpus of people who are involved in presenting conspiracy theories. That is,
Oh, okay.
they. I'm not sure of anything. So you can call me a milk toast or a waffler or whatever it is that you want. But when I'm trying to get my arms around things, I'm willing to say, well, I 90% believe this, or I 75% believe that. But the people who present a lot of these hypotheses about the origin of where we come from, they're very sure of themselves, like to the point where I think you could probably put them on a lie detector test and that this is what they actually believe. So to that end, I'm not.
You have to kind of put it that way to be convincing and to gain trust and respect. I mean, how many times have you run up against somebody when you first meet them? You're like, wow, that person's really smart and they know what's going on. And then you slowly realize, no, they just are extremely confident and present as such. And that lulls you into this false sense that they know what the heck is going on.
Right. But is confidence confidence is a persuasion technique, right?
100%.
So when I look at that, I think, oh, they're really confident. And their confidence is a method for instilling confidence in you that whatever it is that they're saying is true. And so I guess, bringing this back to your singing bowl kind of thing, like being neutral on stuff seems to be a better place to be able to try to ascertain things, because then you don't out of hand just say, oh, that's not true. Some people have both truth and confidence. Yes, Andrew, I know.
Right. And I would say that what you're talking about, rather than being neutral, it's being centered. So you're between complete belief and complete denial.
Right.
You're in the middle of that seesaw. You're in balance.
Right. Or you're in the center column of the Kabbalah, right?
Yes.
Because you got the left hand, which is, it's interesting. When I was learning Italy, the word for left in Italian is sinistra, which is
sinister.
Sinister, right? And the word for right is destra, like destiny. So it's either destiny or sinister.
Yeah. So the left-hand side of the Kabbalah, the three pillars of the Kabbalistic tree, that's the pillar of severity, and the far right is the pillar of mercy, and then the center is the pillar of mindfulness. So you want to be on the pillar of mindfulness.
I do want to be on the pillar of mindfulness. And what's good about it is that it lets me analyze a bunch of things that my confirmation bias would, or my fear, or whatever it is, would prevent me from being able to take in and kind of fully consider it. So, jumping back to Corey Goode, he believes that the asteroid belt is actually the wreckage of a planet. And then he's got this kind of long involved story about the galactic empire that kind of maps everything that we've learned in Star Trek and Star Wars. And then there's a very kind of specific narrative about how aliens came down and that they adapted our DNA. And I think that maps to some of the things that you were talking to me about this week too, right?
Right. That maps with Matt LaCroix's work, who he's written 2 books. One of them I listened to.
Matt LaCroix.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's also an island, St. Croix. You think is that the LaCroix in the Caribbean? And
it's where my ex-wife grew up.
In St. Croix?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
She's a Cruzan.
Oh, that's what they're called? I did not know that.
They're Cruzan, and they speak Cruzan. They suck their teeth when they talk like that.
That's kind of unattractive.
Anyway, totally.
So Matt LaCroix has a book called The Stages of Time, where he's kind of dug into all the ancient texts, cuneiform and such, and tried to suss out the story. Like if you look at that more, what if this is a true story, not metaphorical? So I listened to his book. I ordered a hard copy of it then because he references lots of imagery. And yes, Andrew, my initials are TLC. So I watched a bunch of his videos where he's going through this kind of epic battle that's taking place, and we're taught, oh, this heaven is not what we think it is, or not how it's come down to us as being like this realm where it's just God and the angels and all this. He's like, no, it's a higher dimensional plane. And then there's a lower dimensional plane that we're told is hell, but it's just lower and higher realms of existence. And so I watched some really interesting discussions with him and some other people. I've linked them all up on the site under my ongoing thread posts called Tracy's Fool Journey that I do once every day for the week, and then move to the next week.
Your Fool Journey?
My Fool's Journey, which is a nod to the fool in the tarot who's on this journey to find truth, right? And so at Matt LaCroix, and there's another gentleman named Billy Carson, who everybody might know. He is also on the Gaia Network, and he runs one of the most popular Instagram accounts called the number 4 Bid Knowledge. So the two of them are currently working on a book. I think they're calling it The Epic of Humanity. So they're both taking all the ancient texts that they've studied, and then they've also been to most of, if not all, of these places that still exist on the planet. But this was one of the things that they said in an interview with the two of them that I thought, oh crap, how did I not put that together to bring this all to like where you and I kind of stand in the balance of looking at all these things. And Matt LaCroix pointed out the fact that it just so happens that these giant megalithic, maybe they monuments or statues or anything like that, just seem to be getting destroyed by the terrorist groups.
The terrorist groups.
Right. They contain all this occulted wisdom and knowledge. And there are people that don't want us having access to it. So how do they go about destroying it? The people, they can't show up and dynamite them, but they can pay certain rebel groups to go destroy them.
Right. Palmyra was sacked also, right?
Right. And apparently the most recent one was there was a library in Baghdad that was sacked in 2015 by American soldiers and walked out carrying a bunch of stuff.
Right. So,
okay.
So one of the two books I'm reading, halfway through reading this week, is The Illuminati by Jim Marrs. And Jim Marrs describes in that book that the U.S. military did not secure the museum in Baghdad until, although they did send 9 soldiers over the first day who stayed around for about an hour. They chased away a few looters and then they left. And then after they left, it was sacked. And Jim Marrs points out that he goes floor by floor through the museum and what was taken. And he describes that the most valuable stuff, it was obviously all stolen by people who knew what they were stealing, because anything that was a replica, anything that was something that was a copy of something else that looked real was left. They didn't take anything. They only took originals of everything. And he said that in order for people to be able to do that, they had to have some kind of domain knowledge, and that they had to be organized, and that it wasn't some random looters that were just coming in and grabbing stuff, that the stuff that got taken was specific. And a certain percentage of it was recovered by the U.S. military, but there's still a significant part of it that's missing.
But isn't that interesting? I would never have thought like, hey, these guys they're grabbing all this stuff on purpose and being told to do so for a reason. And that's to keep that knowledge hidden. So you can't just go visit these places. So
this is an interesting question from Andrew, because Andrew is kind of like my go-to Kabbalah guy. He's the one who turned me on to Billy Phillips. And yeah, I think the tarot cards do all completely map to the Kabbalistic tree of life. And I just pulled it up. The two that I was telling you about before we went live that Mark Passio put together. So it's 2 trees of life going for the first 11 cards of the deck and then the second 11 cards of the deck, and how they map out to the Kabbalistic tree of life. Interesting. And so at some point I'll be able to explain to everybody why that is, but for now, that's how. But we're just figuring it out. Yeah. And then I have something to share too, which is, let me see, which was another thing that I discovered this week, which was, and this is, I was watching Dark Journalist, and he was doing a show with a psychic, Gigi Young. and they were talking about CERN. And they were talking CERN, which is the particle physics laboratory that's on the border between Switzerland and France, where they have the Haliden Collider, $8 billion science project, which dark journalist classified. He says that's a military program. He said you don't spend $8 billion on a science project. You spend $8 billion on a weapon system. So anyway, they hired this woman, this German woman whose name is escaping me at this point, to create this tarot deck. I think in it was a few years ago. I want to say 2005, maybe 2012.
I want to say, I think it's 2012 because I went to see if I could buy it. And it said, oh, these were created in 2012. So, okay, this says 2009 through 2011 is when she was working on them.
Right. So she sold them in 2012. You can get a deck on eBay for about $580, I think. Or you can just buy the book. She also has them in a book. But what she's done is she's gone through and she's taken all of the tarot cards and she's illustrated them with what I would say is the greatest hits of conspiracy icons. So Aldous Huxley was a notorious round table propagandist, according to the conspirators. And here he is on the Fool card. And while the cards the imagery don't necessarily map directly to what we know as Kabbalah, it's very interesting that she's taken, that she was the artist in residence at a particle physics laboratory. And one of the things that she came up with was a deck of tarot cards that had all of these things. So Aldous Huxley is the Fool. And then let me see if I can go through some of these other ones. Timothy Leary is the Magician. The High Priestess is the Macy Conferences. The Macy Conferences were the conferences from 46 to 53 on cybernetics, where the people who hypothesized that the globalists want transhumanism got organized. The Empress seems to be the
all the intelligence agencies.
All of the global intelligence agency acronyms. The Emperor is Diogenes. Okay, so we're going to jump back to Diogenes. So go back 2,500 years. And then I don't know who Jim Channon is, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Channon, Project Earthrise. But again, this is probably, here's another rabbit hole to go down, right? Each one of these things indicates another rabbit hole that you can go down. Margaret Mead and Gary Bateson are the lovers. I don't know who Norbert Weiner is. Justice is one world government.
And it's a quote of Bertrand Russell's, huh?
Yeah. Yep. The Hermit is Uncle Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, that fits. But it's interesting that she would choose to include him in this deck. So just one more time, she was hired by CERN to be their artist in residence. She
was and the name of the deck is Hexen 2. And another like weird coincidence that I've started to notice is that the original first-person shooter video games that I was involved in when I was in the video game business were all developed by id Software. And there's a lot of satanic imagery in the game's Doom. Everybody's familiar with Doom. And the art director on that was John Romero, who I met once. And
any relation to George Romero?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to the question. But John Romero claimed to be the art director on all of the original id Software games. Or at least that's the way that he's presented. And Hexen. So in the video game business, the first-person shooters, there are ways that you can take game engines and modify them in order to make your own games. And one of the original mods for the original first internet-based first-person shooter, which was Quake, was a game called Hexen. So when I saw this as Hexen 2, now I know that that's got some kind of occult symbolism, and I'm sure Styx Hexenhammer can explain it off the top of his head what that means. But the name of this deck is the Hexen 2.0 deck.
Well, just going to sorry to interrupt you. Going just to the dictionary. So a hex, obviously a hex is a curse, right? And it seems like hexen is just a variant of that. And it makes me think of the Amish, who there's quite a bit of them settled in Pennsylvania. They're known as the Pennsylvania Dutch. They put these giant signs on the side of their barns that are called hex signs. And it's to ward off evil or for whatever other reason. But that's what I'm thinking this is. It's Hexen 2. So it's an upgrade of the original hex signs, potentially.
Right. So these are to ward off evil?
Or to cast evil. It could be a spell and not, like I'm thinking of the Amish are using their hex signs as a protection spell, because you have to remember they're good and bad and light and dark and all that stuff. So you could have a spell that would protect you and then one that would curse your enemies. So who knows? But now I'm so tempted to buy these cards.
Well, I think the book is cheaper. I think you can still get the book, and I want to say it's like $70 or something. But the cards are only available on eBay, and they're like the deck that I saw was like $580.
Well, I did find a link to buy the deck from the original store, but it was £250, so it's pretty close to whatever you're saying it is on eBay. So continue.
Right. So here's the strength card, which is, again, this is a network, but it's kind of drawn in a semi-Kabbalistic way, right? It doesn't have the right number of nodes on it, but
and across the top,
yep,
that's Freemasonic symbolism,
right? And one of the things that I'm trying to remember where I saw it last week was that the contention was that the name Israel is a combination of three cults: the ISIS cult, the Ra cult, and then the El Chem cult. So you have the moon, the sun, the moon, the sun, and
Saturn.
Right? Saturn, right? And I don't see Saturn on the top there. I see the moon.
But you see the all-seeing eye. So they're Masonic tracing boards, level 1 tracing boards, which is imagery that you're given when you join the order to kind of study and learn. And that triptych across the top is on a lot of the early initiate tracing boards.
And what's a tracing board, Tracy?
I can't come up with a better definition than that's just what they're called, but they're imagery. I'll pull up the tracing board that I'm thinking of.
Okay.
It specifically maps to that.
So the hangman is Stuart Brand, which is interesting because Stuart Brand, my first knowledge of Stuart Brand was when I was a kid, because he published something I think called the Whole Earth Catalog. And then he also started The Well, which was the original internet-based online community. So the original the genesis of social networks was The Well in San Francisco.
Peter, can you jump back to the previous one, and then I'll go right from that to showing you this tracing board that I'm talking about? All right, so there's the tracing board. You see the same imagery across the top.
Right, and you have both. Now you've got 3 columns in this one, though, instead of the traditional 2, and they have 3 different kinds of
tops.
What do they call that?
So it's Corinthian, Doric, and Ionic are the 3 different pillars.
Right. And as SWB,
it's strength, beauty, and either wisdom or will. So when you're an initiate, you can see kind of the tools down here of the plane, and then that's a plumb, right? If you're doing trying to get a level,
right? So
when you're an initiate, you're crossing through the 2 pillars, which show up in the tarot. I haven't seen them in any of these cards that you've been sharing.
Yeah, Boaz and Jachin.
Yes. So strength would be the masculine pillar, and beauty is the feminine. The sun caps off the masculine side, the moon, the feminine side, of course. And then through the middle, which is where you want to be, it's in wisdom or will. And then you've got the the whole of the universe waiting for you there. And the ladder takes you across that and up to the higher plane over here. So this is the 3 levels of masonry, with the initiate being at the bottom. And so there's so much more to this. If I could spin this, I can show you. East is here. So if you turn it on its side, which I can't do, then these pillars become the Tropic of Cancer, the equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn.
Interesting.
And this becomes the Earth down here. And the black and white checkerboard means a variety of things. The one that I like is kind of like you're in base consciousness. The world is black and white kind of deal. So,
and it looks like if you've continued the lines on that ladder and the left column, that it's creating a right triangle, which is, it's got Pythagorean significance, right?
Oh, sure. Well, it's all about learning the sacred geometry stuff. And so there's all kinds of little things hidden in this, and you could spend forever staring at it and trying to contemplate what it all means. So this is what they would give you when you start one of these, and then they figure it out, Peter. Then you get to move up the ladder.
Right, exactly. And I guess that's the key. The key to gnosis, right? Which is the big could be the big G, right?
Could be. And now I've heard that G means geometry, grand architect, God, all these different things.
Right. So it's the confusopoly that's designed in order to frustrate anybody who doesn't have the secret knowledge to go down an infinite number of rabbit holes so that they never actually figure out what's really going on. That's fun.
All right. I'll let you go back to your
right. Well, and that's kind of what, that's kind of my life at this point. It's what I've been doing. I've been getting ready. I'm packing now. I'm getting ready to get on an airplane tomorrow morning and go to Washington, D.C. And everybody is asking me, what do you think is going to happen? And my answer is, I don't have any idea. That's why I'm going. And I noticed somebody else said that I should bring a good. Oh no, it was a different chat room I was in a few minutes ago. Said that someone should take a good camera. I'm gonna take my Widelux with me, my panning film camera, among other things. Any relationships with the hexadecimal system? Yes. I don't know.
Sure. Maybe go check it out. If you understand that system, go overlay it on top of this stuff and see what you come up with.
Right. And now I want to fire up Hexen in Quake. I got to go find somebody to play Hexen with me. Although I think there's a single player version of it, so I can go look at all of the iconography in there.
So somebody agrees with you on the Doom.
Yeah, Doom. Yeah, it's interesting. The whole my background and all of that stuff, because I worked at Sega GameWorks and we put Quake into all of the. We put Quake as the first internet-based multiplayer game that you could play in an arcade. And so I worked with I actually designed the arcade version of the game Quake, and that's how I met John Romero, because he came and he played after I built it. He came and he played on it with somebody else from id, I think maybe American McGee, and they played my version of Quake for 6 hours one day. Playing against two people that were, they were in Dallas, and the two people they were playing were in Ontario Mills, and they were playing on the games that I designed, the machines.
Cool story, Peter. And no, this is not a secret platform. You can stay. We're trying to unearth the secrets that are hidden all around us so that everybody else can recognize them. And it's kind of like, I can't remember who I was listening to, but they said learning these symbols then helps you protect yourself against their use against you. And I thought, oh, that's like Peter telling people how to break out of a yes ladder so they don't fall into that trap.
Right. If you understand that, geometry is a weapon and sound is a weapon, or let's say a tool. Geometry is a tool, and tools can be used to build things, or they can use to blow things up. So, sounds and symbols and all of those things wind up becoming very powerful.
Right. And with symbols, they speak directly to your subconscious. So on a conscious level, you'll just glance over it, but there's something that's been registered in your subconscious. So if you know how to take a look at what it is that you're actually seeing and understand what it is, then you can thwart that negative impact that it could have. So this is interesting.
Yeah, just being able to recognize the stuff. Joe Biden did a video that showed the floor of his house, black and white checkerboard.
I have to go check that out. Well, because now you can go start looking for this stuff, and you'll see it everywhere, and start decoding it. Everything becomes a puzzle. So I'd love to see what else is on Biden's walls and in his house.
Right. I mean, when Jeffrey Epstein's mansion got raided, and there was the painting of George Bush with the airplanes and was it Jenga?
I've never seen that one. I thought you were going to say Clinton in the blue dress with the red high heels.
Well, there's Clinton in the blue dress, and then there was that was married there was a blue, and I think there was I don't know I don't remember if it was red or not, but there was George Bush was sitting, I think, cross-legged on the floor, and it was something that represented the Twin Towers. I want to say it was Jenga blocks or something, and he's standing there with with a paper airplane, like he's flying paper airplanes into the Twin Towers. And so you look at that stuff, and you have to think that when somebody walks in to Jeffrey Epstein's place and then they're hit with that imagery, right? How are they supposed to feel? What is that? What is the psychological impact? Yep, there it is. Yeah, it looks like Jenga, right?
Yeah, it does look like Jenga. And he is, compared with the Clinton thing, then Clinton's in a blue dress with the red shoes, blue and the red. And the blue and the red are stand-ins for the masculine and feminine, among other things. But
right. So whether or not you liked George Bush, you can't look at this image. Okay. I'm sorry, I should reframe that. Regardless of whether or not George Bush is guilty or innocent of having foreknowledge of the 9/11 situation, it's not possible to look at this image without having that thought enter into your psyche and kind of roll around.
Yeah. And it's clear what whoever painted it thought. I don't think there's much hidden in that.
Right. And it doesn't cross the uncanny valley, meaning one of the things that paintings can do is, because it's sort of realistic looking, but it's not really realistic looking, which means that you'll have a tendency to want to believe it more than if it was more photographically accurate. That is, if this thing looked like a photograph, it wouldn't be as powerful. It wouldn't be as impactful.
Correct. All right. Hang on. Let's see here. Could symbolism, just like words, be incorrect or inaccurate, having negative effects in the universe because of its inaccuracy? I don't know that symbols can be inaccurate. I mean, they could tell you a lie, I would guess, but they kind of have this resonance within us. So one of the stories that I heard that just perfectly encapsulates this idea of archetypal images and how they function, how they can make us do things that we wouldn't normally do, is a story about advertising that comes down to Betty Crocker. And I think it was the 50s, Betty Crocker introduced instant cake mix. All you have to do is add water, and it wasn't selling well. And so Betty Crocker hired an ad firm to investigate what was going on. Why is this not selling? So they went out and they did interviews with a bunch of housewives and asked them about the product, and they had all tested it, and they said they liked it. The cake was really good. Everything's great. There's nothing taste-wise wrong with it. But they didn't like the idea that they weren't putting a lot of effort into it. It was
it didn't make them feel like they were cooking.
They weren't contributing to this effort. It seemed like they were lying to their family. Oh, I made this cake, when all they did was add water and then throw it in the oven. And so the ad firm took all this information and came back to Betty Crocker, and they said, listen, We know what you can do. You don't have to change the recipe. You don't have to, pull back all this advertising. You can still sell this thing. We're going to have to just change one thing. We're going to ask them to add one ingredient, and that is an egg. And symbolically, if you think about that in your head, like what does an egg evoke, especially a mother adding an egg, and it worked.
And it adds life. And you know who the consultant was who made that recommendation?
Don Draper.
Edward Bernays. That was one of Edward Bernays' claim to fame, is that he told Betty Crocker to put the egg in.
And Edward Bernays, for people who don't know,
Edward Bernays is Sigmund Freud's nephew, who invented propaganda.
His book is called Propaganda.
His original treatise was the book Propaganda, which was picked up by Joseph Goebbels. And when Joseph Goebbels named his ministry the Ministry of Propaganda, then Edward Bernays didn't want to be associated with Nazis, so he changed the name of his company to the Public Relations business. So public relations is basically the propaganda mind control business as created by Edward Bernays. Here's another symbol I was thinking of when I was listening to you, but that kind of cracks me up, is that it seems to me very much that the anarchy symbol is like a stylized pyramid in the eye. There's a few other symbols that I could pull up that,
well, it would
that
be
have similar things
of that. That's how I see that. The line through the pyramid in the circle A, would be crossing out the pyramid. I can see what you're talking about, how it kind of makes it look like it's two separated pieces, but it could also be the cancellation, which would make more sense understanding that anarchy means without rulers.
Yes.
And the ruler gods of antiquity were called the archons, or the things underneath, let's say, the Praetorian Guard of the demiurge were called the archons. So if you say an archons, that means without those guys.
Interesting. So, but they definitely have the same kind of visual form, right? Mm-hmm. You've got the pyramid and the circle, and you've got and the pyramid is kind of separated. The top of it is separated from the rest of the pyramid, right? So, anyway, what other questions do we have?
Now we've got a whole bunch of different. Get the symbolism of the Israeli Supreme Court building. So I will see if I can find a.
Yep. Well, and this is one of the things that you start to discover, right? When you go back, there was a meme that I it's probably on my Instagram stories that I saw that somebody was making a joke about the little purse.
Oh yeah.
That all of the ancient all of the ancient Neolithic sites, there's always pictures of gods holding, what looks like a little Hermes Birkin bag. And Tracy pointed out that it's interesting that all of these Neolithic gods are holding purses, and there's a purse company named Hermes. Although it turns out, I assume that the Wikipedia entry is correct, although I could be wrong, that the name of the family that started that shop, they made leather saddles, and their name was Hermes.
And so the reason that it's Hermes is because it's Mercury was also known as Hermes, and Mercury is the messenger. So that's kind of like a messenger bag. So here's just some 3 examples from different cultures of somebody carrying this bag. And so then you think of Hermes bag. For those men here that don't know what those are, it's a very sought after hoity-toity purse. It's not, like Kardashian style Louis Vuitton brand label horror stuff. It's really classy. And when we looked that up, what was it? The company was founded in the 1800s, like early 1800s.
Yeah, something like that. And I think they're on the Champs-Élysées, and and they made saddles for wealthy French people, which is why, because their logo doesn't have anything to do with Mercury. Their logo is a carriage with a horse-drawn carriage with a footman standing holding the horse.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they're all over the place. It's the same symbols, and that's why you got to start thinking, like, if these people weren't communicating with each other, then this is how you can either end up in. I think I've decided that Ancient Aliens is a psyop to make everybody think that this is ridiculous and don't look at it, instead of being like, no, maybe they were talking to creatures from higher dimensions, and all this is why they have the same archetypal characters across cultures with different names.
Or maybe the creatures are talking to us in the chat room right now.
They could be.
Yeah.
They very well could be.
Or they could be sitting over our shoulders laughing.
Yeah, the anarchy sign like that is much easier to paint on the buildings. It's true. But I did find the Israeli Supreme Court, if we want to take a look at that for a second. So you can see the pyramid up in the left. But there's a lot going on that. I'd like to see other angles of it.
Very interesting. Yeah, and it almost looks, it's interesting in looking at it, and I guess that's called we're looking at the isometric view, but if you're looking straight down on it in the plan view, there seems to be a lot of symbolism in the upper right-hand corner there with those buildings that seem to be built on top of each other in some kind of a pattern.
It's a very interesting building. And so I don't think anybody would argue that's by accident.
Well, but there's nothing accidental about any building, right?
No, or the street layout, like you were talking about, of DC. And I've recently, one of the books that I listened to this week, I think it was called The Rosicrucian History of the United States. And they talked about Philadelphia being a hotbed for that. And the way that it was laid out, it's 10 degrees off of perfect east, north, west, southwest. And it was to drive the solstice sun at a certain spot in the city on the 2 equinoxes. And I don't remember what the spot, I think whatever it is now gone, but originally it was there. But it was interesting. It was like William Penn, who founded Pennsylvania, was super into having religious freedom. So that's why the Pennsylvania Dutch ended up here. So you have Amish and Mennonites and all these kind of religious refugees from all over Europe coming to Pennsylvania. So he put the call out and was like, anything goes.
So one of the hypotheses, I think it was Corey Good was making in the videos that I was watching last night, is that when you look at the precession of the equinox, is it called the precession of the equinox? Mm-hmm. That's the 26,000-year cycle that describes the Earth's wobble. That there's actually, that's an indication of something. And that is, there was something that hits the Earth every 26,000 years that causes that wobble. And the reason that you've got all of these ages and you have these apocalypses that are kind of scheduled in a calendar is because there are forces, there are waves, there are repeating patterns of energy that pulse throughout the universe, and they wind up affecting all of the stars and planets in the universe on a fairly regular schedule. And so that 26,000 year end time kind of cycle is something, you and I talked a couple of weeks ago about how if you think of the universe as a clock, that, the second hands are ticking, right? And that for better or for worse, every 26,000 years, the Earth gets hit by some massive energy thing that winds up disrupting life on the planet. I thought that was interesting because it wasn't like a woo-woo kind of mystical thing. It was like, no, we live in a clock, and every 26,000 years, there's a supernova at this one place, and it winds up having all of this effect on the rest of the universe. Let me see. If you draw a line connecting the corners of the Pentagon, military buildings, yes, it's a 5-point star goat's head. Well, yes, it's it's an upside down 5-point star. Oh no, there is a goat's head also. It may be an owl. I think there's an owl in there
There's an
too.
owl as well. There's a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to see if I can find a photo of it. I found the owl. So we can look at that real quickly. So there's the owl.
Wait, I want to see the owl again.
I'm loading it. I'm trying to get to a bigger version of it. So it'll take a second. There's the owl. So that's the Capitol building in the middle. And then the Supreme Court's off to the left behind that. But that's the Capitol dome. And you can see clearly the outlines of an owl.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting? I want to see if there's any symbolism associated with the ellipsis, because on the 6th, the president has announced that his big rally is going to be on the ellipse, which is
near the White House.
It's on the it's not on the Lafayette Park side. It's on the opposite side of the White House, and there's a park across the street. There's a President's Park, and then across the street from the President's Park is something called the Ellipse, and that's where
that's astrological all over it.
It does have astrological all over it. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about getting ready for Washington is that I wanted to. Did you ever see that movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still?
I'm familiar with it. I have not seen it.
Okay, it's a movie that was made in I want to say the late 1950s, early 1960s, and it was black and white, famous movie about aliens who come down, and they tell Earth that they're not allowed to have wars anymore, and if anybody starts a war with anybody else, that the aliens are going to destroy them. Okay. And that goes in full accord with the stories that Corey Goode tells, and this other prognosticator named Vladimir Terziski, Terziski. And so one of the things that I was thinking I needed to do is that there's a greeting for aliens that they make in that movie, and I was thinking I need to memorize that greeting in case. I keep having all of these visions of that movie and Mars Attacks, and being in the ellipse with the president on the 6th, and having a big alien spacecraft come and land on the mall. And I wanted to make sure that I had my alien greeting memorized before that happened.
That would probably be pretty smart.
Yeah. It was something Klaatu. I just remember the last word was Klaatu.
Oh, man.
Oh, there it is. Somebody see infinite. Here it is. Here, I got it. Click. Klaatu Nikto Barada. Now we need to go find out whether or not Klaatu Nikto Barada is that Sumerian? Right. Andrew, is it Hebrew? Is it Aramaic? Peter's conditioning has been completed. Yes, my conditioning has been completed. No, actually, it hasn't been completed because my conditioning is a process, right? That's the whole point of the show today, is that my conditioning cannot be complete until I let go of this mortal coil, I suppose. Because the more things you find out, percentage-wise, the less things that you know. Bharata is Sanskrit. See, here we go.
Excellent.
Okay, and didn't Oppenheimer make some kind of Sanskrit remark when at the Trinity site when they fired off the first atomic weapon? Wasn't he babbling Sanskrit also?
I am death, become destroyer of worlds. Is that what he said?
Yes. Yeah, Gort, the killer robot. Yeah, Gort was Gort a killer though, or was Gort really an enforcer of peace? Should Gort have been wearing a blue helmet?
Maybe.
Well, the movie was in black and white. Maybe we didn't see that Gort was actually blue.
Oh, okay, Peter. Here, I found the White House imagery for you.
Okay.
So it is a. It looks like
We need a producer like other shows have.
yes.
That when we're talking about stuff, they just go and they find it for us. Okay, so the Washington Monument.
So
Okay,
let me get rid of this.
so the ellipse, that's where your mouse is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's halfway between the White House and the Washington Monument.
So it's here.
Yep.
So I think I've got to find it's. I know that these images exist. I'm just having a hard time finding them all to figure out what that larger, like this is the feet of something. But so you can see there's multiple pentagrams built into the streets of DC. All right, so I'll find one with the whole thing so we can see where the ellipsis fits. But yeah,
Right.
it'd be nice to have a producer that can go look at this stuff.
Right.
We should also probably just start saving this on our own.
Right. I think it was Nanu, not
yeah, it was
Nanu,
the same thing repeated. It was Nanu.
Thank you, Corky. I love the show with this duo, super unique thinkers and very caring people. We're just trying to figure out what's going on. Do you want to talk about our stereo call a little bit?
Oh yeah, sure.
So Tracy and I tried out this application that you can get called Stereo. I had a call with my friend Merkley yesterday, just trying to get him up to speed and experimenting with it. And I was having audio problems. I couldn't connect to him, but he could connect to me. But it's an interesting app because it's basically the same setup that Tracy and I have here. Except that we're talking on our phones, and instead of you're seeing my actual face with my lips moving, talking into a microphone, you see some kind of little avatar, and the lips just do the lip thing.
We had to make a little cartoon versions of ourselves.
But Tracy was talking about how our banter is different, and I was thinking about how the medium is the message, because right now I'm looking at myself into the monitor of a camera talking. I don't really see the expression on Tracy's face, but I can turn my head like this, and then I can look at Tracy, but then everybody who is looking at me sees the side of my face and they wonder what I'm looking at. In a perfect world, I would have a what do you call it? A teleprompter monitor right here, a teleprompter, and I would be looking at Tracy's face right here. And then I could look into Tracy's eyes. I could read the expression on her face, and then I could react. And everybody looking at this would be somewhat normal. But stereo dispenses with all of that because it's a cartoon, and so you have a tendency to just talk to the other person the same way that you would talk to them when you're on the phone, and the banter going back and forth is different.
Yes, agreed.
Yep,
and so we've had 2 conversations on there. If anybody wants to go find them, I have links to that stuff on our main site, therealityos.com. There's a little menu item up in the top right that says stereo, and this drop down, follow Peter, follow Tracy.
Right. And you've added some things to the website this week too, right, Tracy?
Potentially.
Yeah.
What do you believe?
Don't you have Tracy's research feed or something? I should get disciplined and start putting the stuff that I'm researching on a feed also.
Well, that's what I'm using that kind of thread post for. So it's under the research tab on the website. There's one that's called Tracy's Fool's Journey. And so I start a thread every Monday and just try to capture all the stuff that I've been looking at as best I can. So if I'm watching a YouTube video, I'll throw in the link to that. If, there's a news story, I'll throw that in there. Like my little Tibetan singing bowl. Like I threw that up there this morning. I'm like, here it is. If you want to play along at home, you can get your own singing bowl. Here's a video of a guy telling you how to do the damn singing bowl, because you'd think it would be self-evident. And you're like, oh, maybe not. Let's see. But it's a technique thing that I have to improve.
Right. And I had mentioned earlier, there was a great video that somebody shared on the internet that had this kind of resonant, it looked like an iron table that this Japanese artist put some white sand on, and he was using different kind of whatever you call those things that you attach the singing bowl to. Basically, if you make it play different notes, the sand on the table actually makes different sacred geometric shapes, which is fascinating.
It reacts to the sound waves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you know where the Freemasons temple is in location to downtown DC?
I know that it's the nexus of one of those points on the map that you were showing.
Well, and I found another map that it doesn't have everything, but I can pull it up because it does have what we were looking for. So producer hat, Tracy goes. There we go. So let me pull that down so we get a little bit better look, and then I can zoom in here. So there's the ellipsis that you're talking about, right?
Right, the ellipse.
And so now I remember that it's a giant, I think if you would count it up, it divides into 33 equal parts on that pyramid that you see then that ends at the Capitol building where we were showing the owl, which is outlined in the blue.
It's interesting looking at the circle too, because I'm thinking that's a magic alchemical. Having a bunch of people gather in a circle, that's very magical.
Well, and the sacred circle is the most perfect shape there is.
Right, but when you look at a lot of Crowley-inspired kind of magical stuff, a lot of it has to do with drawing a circle, right? Stepping into the circle, finding your reflection in a mirror, holding the two candles and then finding your reflection in the mirror, or speaking to the other world through this mirror image. It all involves, I think, going into the middle of a circle. So I think it's interesting that we're we're all going to be herded into this circle.
Now I am happy to sit and watch you guys from home.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm at peace. I'm okay.
Yeah, no, I know. I trust that you will be fine.
Yeah. Well, I'll be regardless of whether I make it, I'll be fine. Yeah.
So the symbol, you see the Star of David symbol over the head of the owl?
Yep.
So understanding what that is all 4 earth elements combined into one symbol. So the traditionally symbols of fire and air. Let me look this up because I just studied this yesterday. The upward facing triangle is, a very rudimentary phallic symbol, male phallic symbol.
Like the Washington Monument.
Yes, exactly. So the obelisk would be that. So it's fire and air. So fire is just a triangle, and then air is the triangle with a line near the top. So if you can imagine just pulling that shape out of it, that's fire and air. And then the upside down triangle is the rudimentary female symbol. So a womb symbol. And then if you add a line across the bottom of that, it becomes earth. So that's all 4 of those elements combined into one.
And the yellow indicator on your map is the compass, which is a Masonic symbol, and then the pink V, that is the square.
Correct.
Which is the symbol of Masonry, the compass and the square.
And where is the Masonic temple? Is it somewhere down in this area?
It's at the node of one of those things. Does somebody in the chat room know?
Here. Like there?
It's one of those, I think. I can just go Google it.
All right. And I'll pull that down. Because the Google Earth versions are way cooler when you can actually see it in the street. And it's not just drawn over it. No.
All right, I found it.
Awesome.
Let me see if I can. Okay, so it's not really at a cross street. It's at 1733 16th Street. Here, I'll just show my screen if I can. Dink. It's right here.
Can you go into satellite view? Because then we can just look at all this stuff. Sweet. Thank you.
So it's right here.
So there's more stuff going off. Okay, you can see the pentagram. So it's on a direct line to the White House pretty much, right, Peter? Could you zoom in a little bit more on that part? So that red dot.
So it's straight down 16th Street Northwest, goes through Lafayette Square, through the White House, and through the ellipse. So it's on the same axis. The ellipse is on the same north-south axis, if this is north-south.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And because I believe that the Capitol is in the east. So the sun would rise behind the Capitol dome.
Right. And they're going to try to squeeze everybody who's going in here. But it makes me think it's going to spill out onto the Washington Monument. And there's a little hill that the Washington Monument is on. So my guess is a lot of people that want to watch who don't make it into the ellipse.
And can you go back to the Washington Monument for a second?
Mm-hmm.
That symbol that's around that is yes. So that could be looked at as the, go ahead.
The Vesica Pisces?
Yes.
And it's interesting because, look, the Washington Monument it looks like a clock, like a sundial.
It is. It's a giant sundial. Well, think about how it's oriented.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to figure out if you could tell what time if they have a timestamp for that photo, and you can match it up and see how accurate that is as a sundial.
Some of the coders watching this should make a Washington Monument clock so that you could just put in a date and a time, and it'll show you where the shadow is going to be and how long it's going to be. Because during the year, that shadow will get longer and shorter also.
Correct.
It's very interesting. All right. Let's stop sharing here. All right. Any questions? Body is a temple. Okay. All right. March is going to be there. March, you had all kinds of great questions earlier in our chat room. Maybe I should go see if I could find some of March's questions.
And so the Washington Monument also looks like an L. Correct.
Yeah. So March is a guy that I met when I was in Washington, D.C. last time. He went to the Stop the Steal rally. I think we were at the Mothers. There was some kind of Mothers event that we were at the next day. And I was getting ready to leave, and I turned around, and March was standing there, I think, with an American flag and I want to say an umbrella. Anyway, he just looked like a picture, and I just aimed my camera at him, and I shot a picture of him, and then he and I became friends. He walked up to me, and I gave him my card, and then I sent him the picture, and so we've been talking ever since. We had a very interesting conversation yesterday. But if it's cloudy, you will be late.
It's talking about if you use the sundial. Yes.
Yes. Right. Well, that's always
way more accurate. It's way more accurate than your watch. I think we've talked about this before, and I learned this by watching Murray Rothbard. For those who don't know, is one of the founding fathers of the libertarian movement. So he wrote tons of books about economic theory and all this stuff. But he was also a professor. He was a very funny guy. Long Island type of sense of humor, and he carried himself that way in class. And so one of his entire classes is up on YouTube. It's just the audio of it, but I think it's called The Death of Laissez-Faire, maybe, and it's a history from post-Civil War until the founding of the Federal Reserve, I believe. And so one of the little side stories he tells is where we got time, as far as time zones and all that stuff, and it was via the railroad system. So they could actually have usable timetables for the arrivals of trains. Because I live about 50 miles from Philadelphia west. So a train could leave Philadelphia at Philadelphia time noon and get to Reading at 12:01. Reading time. but it didn't take the train a minute to get there. It's just that I'm not exactly at the same time as Philadelphia because I'm a little further west. So in order to unify that, they kind of were like, all right, we got to just, everybody that lives from this line to this line, you're in this time zone. It doesn't matter. And so there's some states that have a time zone split in the middle of the state.
Yeah, time is really kind of a man-made construct, at least the way that we use it. I was going to use the word arbitrary, but it does have some Sumerian roots. Like it is a base 60 system, right? There's 60 minutes in an hour, and there's 12 hours in a day, and there's 360 degrees in a circle. But being able to apply that in order to move around from place to place on the planet it's kind of interesting. I never really, it's funny, because it always comes up every election year, whether or not we should get rid of daylight savings time, right? Because daylight savings time was supposedly implemented during World War I in order to save energy or some other story, some other cool story. I don't remember what it is, but I wanted to get rid of daylight savings time, and my friend said to me, he goes, "Well, I love daylight savings time," and I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "Because I don't want to walk my dogs in the dark." So because he goes to work, right? He goes to work.
Yeah, I get it. Like, just go later then. But I get it. Yeah.
Right. So it has very kind of practical applications for some people. They like daylight savings time because they have dogs. So I think that people who walk their dogs don't like daylight. They like daylight savings time. They don't want to get rid of it. So,
well, it's also for little kids getting on the school bus to not be standing outside in the dark. It was originally, I think, for farmers and children in school. And
well, that's what they tell you. I don't know if I believe it.
Right, exactly. So kids didn't wait at the bus stop in the dark.
But I think that wasn't it originally done in World War I though? So I don't think there was a lot of school buses in 1914.
I'm dubbing everybody in our audience an associate producer. That's the title that they give out to everybody on a film set that does anything that's not part of the crew, but it makes them feel important. But you guys are important because you can instantaneously fact check us and give us information.
That's right. And that's the power of this medium. DST. Oh, daylight savings time. Yeah, it's kind of a bend the knee thing. Hey, we're the government. We're telling you what to do. None of the answers make any sense. Well, they all make sense for bullshit reasons. I look at it just slightly differently.
Yes, Barnes, add it to your IMDb. I'm sure you want that credit amongst your other ones.
Wait, what?
Producer
what?
On the Reality OS.
Barnes has one of the longest IMDb's I know of any person who I'm friends with.
That's what I figured, but he wants that one. Barnes, you can executive produce. How about that?
Yes, you can executive produce. I'm trying to get Barnes to executive produce. Actually, Barnes wants to executive produce. We've been trying to cook up different ideas. One of the things. So we worked on this website that got deplatformed, and it moved from.
You've talked about it. You don't have to be coy. Everybody knows what it is.
The conservative treehouse, and it moved from WordPress.com to their own self-hosted platform. And one of the things that we found out when we started looking at the statistics was that they have a huge amount of organic traffic. They get almost no traffic from search engines or social media. I mean, they get a little, but compared to a regular website, they get massive amounts of traffic. And in a lot of ways, it's anti-fragile, which is what's his name?
Nassim Taleb term that means it becomes more robust the more you beat on it.
Right. And so, 80-90% of the people who are going to this website are actually typing in theconservativetreehouse.com, or they've got it bookmarked so that they're just going to it every day. And it's a huge amount of traffic. And there's no way that Google or Facebook or is going to do anything to impact them at this point, because their fan base is incredibly loyal. And it reminded me of something that I think it was the president of DirecTV. I was at CPAC or something like 20 years ago, and he said that in the future, you can either own your audience or you can own your content. But those are the only two business models in media that really make sense. And to me, it's just a testament that Sundance, the guy over there at Conservative Treehouse, he really owns his audience, and he deals with them like they're his family. I mean, when we were going through the process of moving the website, his ultimate goal was to make sure that as many of his I don't want to say followers, I'm going to call them his family, that they were not being put out, that their wishes and their ideas about the direction of the site were being supported by whatever the technology choices that we were making were. And that was great. And it's completely relevant and referenced by his traffic.
So we want to build the same kind of feeling here. That's what you were trying to say, right?
It is what I'm trying to say. Yes.
There you go. Well, speaking of, associate producer Connie came up with this.
Connie is Johnny on the spot. She's Connie on the spot. Yeah.
There you go.
You save energy. Yeah. It was first used in 1908 in Thunder Bay, Canada. Yeah, that is the official word. I just don't know if it's got some kind of conspiratorial reason behind it.
There you go. There's your conspiracy reason.
Okay. To save electricity.
I don't know if that maps. It's like Benjamin Franklin, the guy that harnessed electricity.
Wasn't he trying to save electricity in a jar?
Right. What was that? Keep it in a key, and then he was trying to trap it in a rod, because not only did he get the whole kite story, but he invented the lightning rod too.
That's right. So we don't know the answer to the question, and which brings us back to the whole point of this show is, truth is a process, right?
Mm-hmm. And yes, Rothbard taught at NYU Poly. Didn't he? I believe Rothbard also taught at UNLV for a long time.
Who's Rothbard again?
Murray Rothbard. He's one of the founders of the Libertarian Party.
Right.
You'll see people that one of my favorite T-shirts just says "Read Rothbard" and it's a silhouette of him. But he was a very, another polymath. So not only did he write these huge economic treatises, but he also did movie reviews and those kind of things as well. So he's very into the pop culture side of the world.
Right.
Yes, new official terminology. Connie on the spot.
It is.
Here goes the PSYOP. Ancient Aliens, Season 3, Episode 11. It's all about Washington statues, roads, and their meaning. Was it aliens? They couldn't be that ancient.
Again, it depends on which alien mythology. Who else was talking? Jay Dyer started to talk about the. He did a couple of shows on the X-Files this week. I started to try to watch them, but they kind of got rambling, and so I kind of lost interest. But it is weird because my first big internet job ever was building the xfiles.com website. And so I'm watching Dark Journalist, and I'm thinking about X steganography, and it's just so weird how all of these things kind of overlap. Like they intersect like streets in Washington, D.C. in my life. He ruined the kite industry. Yeah, it was never the same. That joke's kind of inside though.
Yeah, but it's funny.
Yep. Ron, right. What's Ron saying? Ron says, "I love my work. It starts when I get up. I care nothing for a clock until I have to visit the bank." Yeah, that's right. But you don't even really have to visit the bank that often anymore now, Ron, because you can just like take pictures of your checks and deposit them that way.
Yeah, and banks are closed anyway, at least in my state, until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, Peter. I don't know if you saw my celebratory tweeting about where I'm getting off being grounded. I might have told you that, I think, on our stereo chat.
So did the governor of your state close the banks?
Well, banks were doing drive up only for a while in the state. So I know that the branch of my bank, so I used to have a very regional located bank, and then it got subsumed by Santander, which is a Spanish bank. And so they're all over the place here. They have a headquarters in the little city where I live, but there's a little local branch down the corner.
A Spanish bank is your
Santander. They're huge. Go look at them. They're big. So they swallowed up my little local bank. And the local bank, I mean, it had spread throughout the Philadelphia suburbs. But the bank, the branch down the street from me is closing for good after this because they were just doing drive-up service for this whole time.
Right. Well, I guess Bitcoin is still going crazy right now, and in March's thread, the people were talking about crypto, and my giant asterisk that I put next to crypto. I did very well in 2017 in crypto. Yes, I kind of pinched myself because I had money sitting in a Coinbase account in dollars that I didn't put into Bitcoin. So I look at what's going on with Bitcoin and I do pinch myself a little bit. But cryptocurrency runs on the internet, and people think that the internet is free. And I believe that that's a myth that has been foisted on people in order to make them believe that it is something that it's not. And the issue is that the internet runs on technology that's owned by phone companies, and phone companies are all of it. And phone companies are regulated by governments, all of it. And at the point when crypto starts to look like it's going to be an existential threat to any of these governments, my guess is they're going to clamp down on it, which means that they're going to make it incredibly difficult to transact, at which point that will negatively impact the value of something that is really just what do they call it? It's called I'm spacing. It's a device for moving value from one party to another. So it's a bearer instrument.
Medium of exchange?
It's a bearer instrument. Right?
Oh, okay.
It's not a security. If you buy stock in Ford Motor Company, they have real estate and they have products that they create. They have profit and loss,
there's something
asset
backing that. Yeah, there's assets.
Profit, loss, asset, and liability is how you define the value of a company. The stock value of a company generally has to do with the assets that it has and the amount of revenue and profit that it's generating. Right. The price of Bitcoin is like what people are willing to pay for it. And it really is a currency. It's not money. Money is usually backed by something. So it's a currency that's backed by nothing except goodwill.
Which is what the U.S. dollar is.
The U.S. dollar, the dollar bills that I have in my safe right now are not dependent upon whether or not there's electricity flowing into my safe.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the physical dollars that you hold, correct. But the dollars that are in a bank account that you have digitally that you can access, like I can go into my bank's app and that's
they might as well be cryptocurrency. You're correct. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is tenuous.
Yeah, when they get So my advice to anyone who's holding Bitcoin right now is physical swap of cold storage device. You can actually print out a Bitcoin. Yes. A lot of people don't know that. You could actually print one out and then you could just go put it in a safe. But the problem is transacting it at that point. You have to key all those numbers back in order to be able to do something. If you can't key it back into anything, then it's done. It's toast. It's history. And that's the issue I've got with Bitcoin.
All right. So was there anything else you wanted to get to today, Peter?
I think I'm done unless anybody else has got a question. I can finish getting ready. I'm getting ready to go to arguably the most modern capital city of the most modern nation in the history of modern nations. And I'm packing food because there's a good chance that I'll be caught in situations where I won't be able to find anything to eat. And they're doing that on purpose. And so I'm trying to pack to go to Washington, D.C. for a few days. And trying to consider all of the different contingencies.
So what's your advice about Bitcoin, Peter?
If you're holding Bitcoin right now, you might want to just cash out, because if you've got a 10-to-1 return right now because you bought it in like a year ago, like that's a good return.
Yeah, it depends on how much. Like I put in, I think $200, maybe a little bit over a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's now worth 1,000. So I'm just like, you know what? That was money that I don't care if I lose. So I'll ride it out.
Right. Okay. You can hold. Those people are called hodlers, right? People who hold. It's misspelling the word hold. And of course, my friend Max Geyser will tell me that I'm crazy, and Jay Dyer probably also will tell me I'm crazy.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
My posts are 5 minutes behind your broadcast. Well, they may be. What you don't see, Ron, is that they're popping up in a sidebar here, and we may see them, but we have to click on them in order to push them into the window in order to be able to see.
So if we're in flow, I don't throw them up on the screen.
So yeah, yes, Connie, I spent $70 on bars at the store. Like I got every different kind. I thought, well, I don't want to just eat the same kind, and I live in the most expensive neighborhood maybe in the United States. So I didn't get like 3 bags of bars when I spent $70. So
you got two bars.
I got one.
Wow.
I got 1 bag. Anyway.
All right. Well, good luck in DC. Thank you, Peter. And you'll try to maybe put some of the stuff up on social media this time?
Yeah, I'll try if I have sell. I mean, here's what I'm doing. Pat is supposed to meet me in DC.
That would be Pat Moyse from
Pat Moyse, the occult
expert.
Yes,
as much as one can be an expert on that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to meet me, but I'm bringing walkies, Tracy.
Well, good.
Because I don't know if phones are going to work.
That's a good call. Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, with that, we'll say Happy New Year and talk to all you guys later.